Hello everyone and welcome to the live Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott. It is the 25th of November 2021. How did it get to be this date already? I hope you are beginning to feel Christmassy. Certainly the temperatures here in the UK have plummeted this past week and now it is freezing cold outside. And everyone is starting to feel now that Bonfire Night and Black Friday is coming, isn't it? So Bonfire Night is gone, Black Friday is coming. Everyone's starting to feel just a little bit Christmassy, and in fact, some of the music radio stations are turning fully Christmas music from tomorrow. Can we stand it for just over a month of Christmas music? I think we can. I hope you guys have been having a wonderful couple of weeks, and it's great to be back with you to share a few more of your wonderful questions and come up with some great answers about the ancient world. So we are going to dive right in because Sarah Scotty has been asking this. Sarah Scotty has asked, are there still people who believe and worship the Greek and Roman gods? Ooh, Sarah, are you thinking about kind of offering up a few sacrifices yourself anytime soon, I wonder? Welcome everyone, welcome Nassim, welcome Randy, welcome Professor Weston Yarrow. Hello, good to see you tuning in from Brazil. Thank you so much for tuning in, where I suspect it is a lot warmer than it is here in the UK. In Brazil, obviously, as you're about to go into your summertime. Happy Thanksgiving, of course, yes, indeed. For those of you celebrating Thanksgiving, enjoy, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend all together. The question that has come into us from Sarah is, are there still people who believe and worship the Greek and Roman gods? And yes, I think the answer is absolutely yes. Hello, good evening from Rome. Good evening to you all. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in. Yes, so are there people who worship the Greek and Roman gods? Yes, there are, in different formats. In fact, a couple of years ago in Greece, they actually had an application to the archaeological authorities from a group of worshippers of the ancient Greek gods to conduct a ritual in the sanctuary of Olympian Zeus in Athens. This group wanted to come in, and I believe the application was only to pour libations and offer vegetarian or vegetable offerings, burn that to the ancient gods and particularly to Zeus, rather than to bring an ox on or a cow and slaughter it and have blood spilling everywhere and cut it up and put it on a massive bonfire. So I don't think that was in the application. I don't think they thought that would be approved, but they did think perhaps they stood a chance of getting an official license to worship in the sanctuary near the temple of Olympian Zeus. I believe that was actually turned down. But it just shows that people are out there willing to and wanting to worship the ancient Greek and Roman gods indeed. So hello to those in Shropshire. Hello those who are watching in visible Athens, visible cities, Athens. Hope you're enjoying. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's great to see you. And thank you for taking the time today. We are talking about Sarah Scotty's question, thinking about those who are actually worshipping the ancient Greek and Roman gods. Very good to see you've got your calendar as well. Excellent work. Yes, we'll be sort of talking a little bit about the calendar in a second. Thank you very much indeed for your kind words. So we can see those who have been worshipping the Greek and Roman gods are out there, and I suspect in larger numbers than we might imagine. In fact, don't we all worship in some ways the Greek and Roman gods, particularly Bacchus or Dionysus, every time we get out a good glass of wine and sit around with our friends to get together. So Sarah, I think there are definitely people out there worshipping in every way, shape and form. So yes, I mentioned the calendar. Of course, now is the time to get your orders in for the Professor Michael Scott 2022 calendar. Don't forget to do this before A, stocks run out because they are limited, and B, the last posting dates for Christmas are coming up fast. Because everything's been slightly delayed. The post is delayed about you, but where I am, we've been weeks behind with our post a little bit. And so do get your orders in sooner rather than later for the Professor Michael Scott calendar for 2022. Sarah says she's a cider drinker rather than a Bacchus wine drinker. Well, what's the difference between cider and wine? We can, let's not split hairs about this. In the worship of the ancient gods, we should definitely all raise a drink together. Paul Carolyn Nicola asks, is there a record of people making cider in classical history? Well, this is a good question. I think we need to, I'm absolutely sure there probably is. I need to think about what that might be. But yes, I can imagine cider definitely as a drink coming up indeed. So so we have got the 2022 calendar, and I have to admit that I have been completely defeated still by Amazon and the gremlins of the Amazon system. So when you go to Amazon, the main place to order a calendar, and you Google for the Professor Michael Scott calendar, it is still showing you the idea that this is the Professor Michael Scott calendar back in 2021. The description of it is still noting that it's a 2021 calendar. I apologise for this. I have tried desperately to fix it, but I can't seem to be able to do so. But you will see the pictures that are there on the Amazon listing are of, very clearly, the 2022 calendar. Here it is that you can order here in my hands, the 2022 calendar with a nice sea picture that I took up on the Isle of Mull, in Scotland for you. So do not be afraid. Order the calendar on Amazon and you will definitely get the 2022 calendar. And don't forget that you can have that calendar signed by me, and I can write a dedication, any kind of dedication you like. You just need to specify that as part of your Amazon order, what it is you want said, to whom it should be dedicated. The other alternative, if you don't want to order through Amazon, is you can order direct by email. So if you email michaelscottacademic@gmail.com and then say what you would like, and then Claire will get in touch to give you the PayPal instructions to send the money through PayPal instead, and then we'll get that calendar out to you. So hello everyone, thank you so much indeed for joining us. Hello everyone for joining in, do get your orders out for the 2022 calendar before they go. So I will show you one particular picture that I rather enjoy. I don't know if this was included in the photos that I put up on Amazon, so you may have seen this or you may not. As ever, the calendar is a mix of photos that I've taken of places that I really love around the world, but also some photos of me larking around in different forms, shapes and sizes. And here we are. Here we have one of my favourites. This is for June 2022. Yes, it's me with boyhood dreams, pretending to be a policeman on the back of a motorcycle. So there you go. You get a little bit of a snapshot of a photo that you might not have had a chance to see before from the calendar, but do get your orders in now. We had a great question from Sarah about whether people still believe in worship the Greek and Roman gods. And now we're moving on to a question by Susan Harris, which is, how did the treasuries at Delphi reflect power and the status of city-states? Susan, you're asking a question right at the heart of my love of the ancient world. This is basically my topic of my PhD. Alexis, how arresting. Brilliant, thank you. I believe that's in relation to the picture of me on a police bike. Sadly, it's got the kind of prongs definitely in the ground. The policeman was standing behind me, making sure that I didn't actually try to make off with it in any way, shape or form. But Susan Harris's question, how did the treasuries at Delphi reflect power and status of city-states? Well, how long have you got, Susan? So what seems to have happened here is that at the sanctuary of Delphi, where people were coming on a regular basis to consult the oracle, so once a month for 9 months of the year, and then every 4 years they were coming to take part in the Pythian athletic and musical competitions, just like there were competitions at Olympia, the Olympic Games. Lots of people would be coming to this sanctuary on a regular basis. In fact, some of the largest groupings of Greeks ever happening in the ancient Greek world would take place at sanctuaries like Delphi and Olympia. So that meant that there were moments when, if you wanted to communicate something to the wider ancient world, being at Delphi and Olympia and having some kind of physical, artistic, architectural presence there made a lot of sense. This is a world which didn't have radio, TV, Facebook, news channels, websites, internet, all the normal ways we think of today of how we communicate information to the wider world. So if you didn't have those kind of tools at your disposal, you had to really be where the people would come to. And that would be sites like Delphi and Olympia. And of course, you couldn't just put up a billboard, because these were religious sanctuaries dedicated to the gods, Apollo at Delphi and Zeus at Olympia. So you had to make some kind of religious dedication that could then go into the sanctuary and become a permanent part of the sanctuary that would then be permanently on display to the world whenever they came to Delphi over the subsequent years, decades, centuries. Because the rather natty thing about giving something to the gods and dedicating it to the gods within their sanctuary was that it became the property of the god and could therefore never be removed. So it wasn't like a billboard that you got a month of advertising and then you were gone. You were yesterday's, yesterday's newspaper, today's trash. You had a permanent memorial within the sanctuary that could never be taken away. And that's what made these sorts of things so attractive, particularly to city-states, not just to individuals, but to city-states, because not cities, polis like Athens or Sparta or Thebes, were equally keen that what they'd done and what they'd been successful at, particularly in terms of battles they'd won, they wanted the world to know about those successes as well as a community. So there you have it. It made great sense to put up some kind of monument to the god in the sanctuary that could simultaneously speak to how brilliant you were as a city-state. And, of course, a treasury was a great way of doing that. A treasury is simply a building, a nice building, a little building that could fit inside a sanctuary that was like a mini temple in a way, 4 sides, so rather than columns, but then had a bit of space for sculpture, pedimental sculpture on the top, and particularly some metopes perhaps around the sides. And so you could put this building up in the sanctuary, dedicated to the god. You could then fill it with more nice things from your city-state that you wanted to show off. They were all protected from being stolen because they all belonged to the god and no one would dare. And then when it came to times like the Pythian Games and everyone from your city-state were rocking up at Delphi, that your treasury, your city's treasury, could end up being your kind of meeting point for citizens from your community. So it could be like a gathering point. And when those events weren't happening, it stood there as a reminder to how fantastic your city was. So there you go, Susan. That's a kind of a shorthand version of what the treasuries at Delphi and indeed Olympia, there are treasuries at Olympia, were doing in terms of how they reflected the power and the status of the city-state. And they did that then through the choice of materials. So the finer the materials, the nicer the marble, obviously the more expensive the building, said something about how powerful you are as a city-state. Then it would be done through the choice of architectural sculpture. So what are the themes you put on your metopes? What are the themes you put in your pediments? The Athenian treasury at Delphi, for instance, very purposefully has metopes of both Heracles, who is a kind of pan-Greek hero, in absolute alignment with and equally as important as Theseus, who was a very much Athenian hero. So they kind of put their Athenian hero on par with a pan-Greek hero to make the case about how important they are. And there are all sorts of very sort of natty little ways in which the building can make itself stand out. And then, of course, buildings sort of faced off against one another. These treasuries faced off against one another. I like to call it kind of monument wars, because if a treasury had just been put up by a city-state that, say, Athens came along a year or two later and was rivaling and wanted to outdo, they might try and put their building, their little treasury, directly opposite the other city-states and make it deliberately bigger, so that there was a kind of obvious rivalry directly in front of one another. Yes, so if you want to know more about this, do have a look at the Delphi BBC documentary, Belly Button video. Yep, that's the one. It was called Delphi, Belly Button of the Ancient World. That wasn't my choice of title. That was the BBC doing that. Yes, Fiona, Belly Button, yes, because Delphi is known as the omphalos of the world, which translates quite literally as the navel or the belly button of the ancient world. But apparently, when you're choosing titles for TV programs, you need to have a sort of sexy or exciting word within the first 4 words of the title, because that's what's printed in bold in the Radio Times, and thus kind of people get excited about it. So yes, if you have Delphi belly button of ... it might attract viewers to the program who might not otherwise come to watch a program about ancient Greece. I know, it's shameless, isn't it? The sort of advertising that is kind of advertising techniques that are got involved with. Shocking. I didn't have anything to do with it, I promise. So, Susan, thank you so much indeed for that brilliant question about Delphi indeed. Now, we've had another quick question about architecture, which is from Lee Edmond. I think you've just joined us, haven't you, as well? And this is from your pupils. This is talking about the standard orders of classical architecture, the Doric, the Ionic, and the Corinthian. Any top tips, Lee asks, on getting inside the mind of neoclassical architects as to why they lent so heavily on classical forms? The most recent lesson quickly segued into questions about cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation, and where we should draw the line. Really interesting question. Yes, so we have the ancient elements of architecture, the three different column styles from the ancient Greek world. The Doric, the most simple in some ways. The Ionic, which is the one that has lots of the flowery sort of curves on either side. Looks like a kind of wig from the era of King George. And then there is the Corinthian, which is a sort of quite a late addition in the Greek architectural order, very popular in the Roman world, which has all the sort of acanthus leaves at the top and lots of kind of decoration at the top, and is the finest, most intricate stonework possible. So you have those three in the ancient world, but then, yes, you're absolutely right that they start being copied and then adapted, particularly in by neoclassical architects, particularly in periods that sort of really wanted to be associated with and link themselves back to the ancient world. So the Victorians absolutely loved doing this. Very much from the period of time when ancient Greece comes back on the map as an important and useful place to be linked to. So you could think about the Renaissance, obviously, but that's very much linking to Rome and the architecture that's in Rome. If we want to think about when it links back to the architecture of ancient Greece, don't forget ancient Greece is sort of out of bounds. Because from 1453 all the way through to 1821, ancient Greece is actually under the Ottoman Empire, and it's only after 1821 and the Greek War of Independence that Greece becomes much more easily visitable, and the new Greek state starts to actually clear the archaeological sites, create archaeological sites, and make Greece a place that people can visit safely from Europe, particularly as part of the Grand Tour, but equally want to visit, and which has great things to see when they do visit. So it's really from the 19th century onwards that it's Greek architecture fueling this interest as well. But all the way through the period, what you see is it's not just blatant copying of the ancient architectural orders, it's adaptation as well. So very often they're adding bits here, changing elements there, calling it Ionic or Doric, but actually they're all slightly different. And through that reception process, we get a whole series of different architectural orders that weren't actually recognized in the ancient world at all, but which come as part of the reception and adaptation of the ancient Greek world. Yes, Miriam, yes, I am back out of my office, but the boxes are still in my office. Can you believe it? We've been promised that we'll move into our new building at the University of Warwick in the next 2 weeks, so perhaps we might be able to do a Q&A from the new offices in the new building in the not too distant future. Alexis, yes, imitation is very much the highest form of flattery. Wanting to incorporate the ideals and the power of those communities. Now back to Lee's question about when does cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation overlap. Absolutely, the two are kind of identical. And there's been a really interesting process if we think just principally about museums. So in the States, particularly when many of the great museums of the States were being built in the 20th century, obviously ancient Greece, absolutely accessible, very much something that America more generally wanted to link itself back to, which it hadn't hitherto done. And you see lots of museum buildings being built in this period, which are built to echo ancient Greek architecture, just like the British Museum in London, for instance. But they're doing that because they want to echo those ideals of democracy, freedom, and make the museum appear to be that kind of space that's for all. But actually there's been quite a pushback against that, particularly over the last couple of decades, as that kind of architecture, that classical architecture, has increasingly become associated with the establishment, and not necessarily as an architecture that is welcoming to all. Is the British Museum a place that anyone with no kind of necessary classical training or background, or not used to going to museums, would feel welcome stepping into? Many have argued that this kind of architecture actually has ended up becoming a barrier to people feeling part of and welcome into a particular kind of space. And so now, actually, when you see museums being built, both in the UK and in the US, very, very rarely does anyone employ that classical architecture now as an exemplar of kind of democracy, freedom, and open and a place for all. In fact, the architecture and language of that kind of narrative is now glass and steel. So all the museum buildings that are being built are all about glass, see-through spaces, kind of where you can envisage yourself more easily inside, where the difference between the inside and the outside is trying to be minimalized through the use of glass, so that the architecture itself doesn't become such a barrier to welcoming people in. So it's really interesting to see how classical architecture has moved dramatically from being an architecture encompassing the ideals of democracy, freedom, accessibility, openness to all, to actually becoming, in many places and cases, an architecture of establishment, an architecture of differentiation, an architecture actually of elitism. And is so being disbanded with in many, many ways. Sarah, parallel universe, the clock is back to front. No, it's just how the cameras work on the phones and Facebook. I cannot get it worked out whatsoever to be able to turn it around to be the right way and still be able to see your comments at the same time. That's the trouble. I have to be facing the screen and thus using the front-facing camera, which reverses it in the wrong way. I promise you there are no parallel universes involved. So thank you, Lee, so much for your question. Now on to the news, because today there has been an amazing discovery announced in all the papers that's been rumbling under the surface for a little while. Many of you will have seen this. It's the Mosaic that has been uncovered in Rutland on as one of the great outcomes of lockdown. If there are positive outcomes of all the lockdowns we've had, it's that this family who own this land up in Rutland were doing walks in 2020 during the era of COVID, when you couldn't go and do anything and go anywhere. And as a result, kind of they came across something in the ground that they'd not noticed before and thought it was worth investigating. And so they brought in the Leicester University archaeology team and have been digging away. And they have uncovered not just a complex of a Roman villa and a whole series of other buildings, but a mosaic, which is not unusual. Lots of mosaics surviving from Roman villas in Britain, but this one is very unusual because it's the first ever UK example of a Roman mosaic depicting Homer's Iliad. And this mosaic is depicting a scene of Achilles fighting Hector. And this is very rare. First in the UK, one of only a few across Europe. And so we're seeing here in the 3rd or 4th centuries AD, a Roman villa owner choosing to have as a theme on the floor of perhaps of their dining room, a mosaic relating back to kind of Homer's Iliad, and just shows you quite how much power that kind of piece of literature still had by that period of time in the 3rd to 4th century. So it's an absolutely stunning discovery and really quite amazing. So do go and have a look. There's a couple of articles about it in the newspapers today, which we'll be flagging on the Facebook page. So do go and have a look at those and get involved. It's kind of absolutely beautiful to see as well. It's a real piece of art. Other things that I wanted to flag to you. So in the Observer, we had the discovery of the Pompeiis slave room, telling us a little bit more about the life of what the poor slaves of ancient Pompeii had to live in. Very cramped quarters, 3 wooden beds, a chamber pot and a wooden chest found in these cramped living quarters as part of the sprawling villa in just outside of Pompeii's city walls. Back in Britain with Hadrian's Wall, they are soon to celebrate the 1900th anniversary of Hadrian's Wall with a great art installation. So there's going to be a festival running from January 2022, the 24th of January 2022, in fact, which was Emperor Hadrian's birthday. Greetings from Las Vegas. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for tuning in. And it will run all through 2022 until December time, through to the Roman Saturnalia. What a great beginning and closing for an art installation. So do go and have a chance to have a look at that. This is brilliant from Hull. Hull Live. What did the Romans ever do for Hull. New clues reveal intriguing link to our city centre. And it says Hull, always slightly self-depreciating. When it comes to Roman history, Hull might not have some way to catch up with Hadrian's Wall. But now, at least, some people believe that Hull might have begun life as a Roman settlement and even indeed a small port. Go Hull! Absolutely. Keep talking there about what you owe to the Romans. In Germany, massive hoard of Roman-era silver coins have been unearthed. And then did you see this? A US tourist getting fined for trying to sneak into the Colosseum to drink a beer in the Colosseum. He got an €800 fine for kind of deciding that the Colosseum was his personal drinking place. Tut, 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 I think we all agree. And then if the mosaic that we found in Britain isn't good enough, this is an absolutely extraordinary story that a priceless Roman mosaic spent 50 years as a coffee table in a New York apartment. That's in The Guardian again. Yes, it's a Roman mosaic that once decorated a ship used by the Emperor Caligula, was then used as a coffee table in New York City. And they've recently found it and grabbed it back, and hopefully there aren't too many coffee stains on it. So yes, indeed, absolutely brilliant stuff. Now, about things coming up that you might want to go and see and get involved in. So at the Science Museum in London, there is the Ancient Greeks Science and Wisdom exhibition that's opened on the 17th of November and will run through to June next year. And I'm actually doing an event at this in February next year. So we'll put the dates up on the Facebook page that you can get your tickets for, but it's going to be a roundtable discussion with a fantastic kind of group of people, myself, Alice Roberts and others, all talking about ancient Greek science in the ancient world and kind of how we're trying to use science to open up the ancient world to modernise as well in a modern world. And we're talking a little bit about the laser scanning stuff that we did for Invisible Cities there. So do go and see that exhibition. Do hope you can come and see us in February. Then also there is the Lytham St Anne's Classical Competition 2022. You know how close Lytham St Anne's is to my heart. As president of the association since now 2014, we're starting to be able to see on the horizon a decade of the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association. Not long to go now. They have announced their 2022 Classics competition for you to get involved in. There's prizes for students who get involved. So anyone with school kids out there, school teachers, Lee, I'm looking at you, do get your kids involved in this. It is a question. Who is your unsung hero from the ancient world? Would be a great Q&A question. You have to put in a response, and the deadline is the 6th of March 2022. So do get involved in that competition. And then on the 7th of December, the Actors of Dionysus are having their big night in. So join them on Zoom from 7 p.m. onwards for an evening of festive fun and help raise funds for the Big Give campaign. The Actors of Dionysus, as you may know, put on fantastic representative performances of ancient plays, but also do huge amounts working with schools, training, and an awful lot of great stuff. And during lockdown, they became famous for doing their lockdown bites, renditions of pieces of ancient literature that I participated in, along with an absolutely large number of other great people. And then, of course, back into Lytham St Anne's, I will be up there on the 13th of January to give my presidential lecture in Lytham St Anne's. We have, I believe I'm announcing this here for the first time, we have had to move to a bigger venue. In Lytham St Anne's. We are now taking over, I think, pretty much the biggest venue Lytham St Anne's has to do the presidential lecture live in person. We are going for it, so join us on the 13th of January, and then there'll be a celebration dinner afterwards. Clive, you sneaked into the Palace of Knossos for an ouzo. I am shocked and disgusted. Never done anything similar at all whatsoever. Absolutely, yes, indeed. Well done, Clive. I hope you enjoyed your time. So yeah, if you can join us in Lytham St Anne's on the 13th of January, please do. That is our time almost up, and I didn't get to answer Elizabeth. Right, okay. Elizabeth Henriksen, you asked a question last time about the middle finger gesture and whether that has origins in the ancient world. We will answer this next time. Yes, Patricia, that's the pavilion. We're going for the pavilion for the 13th of January in Lytham St Anne's. That's indeed. So next time we will talk about the origins of the middle finger gesture in the ancient world. And when is next time? Next time is going to be the 16th of December. So it will be a nice Christmassy Q&A just before Christmas, 16th of December, 5 p.m. Put it in your diaries. Look forward to seeing you there. In the meantime, do get your calendar orders in and we will get those out to you as soon as possible. Take care of yourselves and everyone around you. Have a wonderful run up to Christmas and I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Take care all.